Good morning, and welcome to the latest edition of SDG's Fantastic People series. Our Community Relations Department started these, I think it was a couple of years ago, and through this, we've been able to invite people from all walks of life to share their amazing stories, careers, thoughts, and perspectives. We've had quite a wide array of guests over the course of this series, from astronauts to a TV producer to professional athletes, and I believe the most recent one was a month ago today with Rob Machado, the professional surfer, humanitarian, and environmentalist. These guests have not only shared their stories, but have engaged in discussions on topics that should be important to all of us, such as diversity and inclusion, racial equality, social justice, the environment, and just our overall love for the San Diego community. I would first like to take this opportunity to unfortunately remember a member of the SDG family that we have recently lost. Gilbert Donovan, an employee of Kearney, was involved in a tragic car accident on May 10th. 6 days later, passed away at UCSD Medical Center, leaving behind a wife and young daughter. This hit home for me personally. I worked with Gilbert from 2014 to 17. You can't find a person to say a negative thing about Gilbert. Just a kind, caring, warm-hearted individual. And obviously his family is going through some tough times, so please keep them and his extended family and our friends and colleagues here at SDG in your thoughts and prayers. So please join me in a moment of silence. All right, thank you. And we're also going to start off with the safety message. At SDG&E, it's more than a value or priority. It's just really a part of just who we are. It always has been and always will be. I just want to tell everybody, everything you do every day, every decision point that you have, make sure that you're doing everything to ensure your personal safety, the safety of your colleagues, your friends and family, away from work, and then also just to ensure the safety and the communities that we live in and serve. To help introduce our special guest, we're going to play a short video clip.
Line drive, center field. Will that fall? Gutierrez can't get it. He lost the ball. Here comes Hairston to score, and Gwynn is flying around third. He's going to try an inside the park home run, and he has done it. Oh, my.
Swing and a bouncy ball towards the middle. It's through! Torrealba touches the plate. And for the third straight game, the Padres win it in their final at bat and take it today 3-2.
Over the last handful of years, and he's okay. I mean, seems to be through that as he punches that down the left field line. Ruiz is going to score, and Gwynn's going to go to second. It'll be an RBI double, and the Phillies are finally on the board. It's a 5-1 game. And a line drive base hit to left center field. Tony Gwynn cuts it off on the backhand. Sherrill's trying for two. The throw by Gwynn. He is out at second base. That one smacked sharply to center. Gwynn going back and makes the catch on the run. Another hard out that Tony Gwynn was able to outrace and take out of left center field. Looper, center field, base hit. Might be a play at third. Gwynn's throw to the bag at Tenley, and they get him. Oh, my. Tony Gwynn makes a terrific play. He threw on the run. He didn't set himself. He threw like an infielder.
All right, we've got some great highlights and really timely too, since the Padres had an inside the park home run yesterday as well, and got to hear some timeless play-by-play from the late great Dick Enberg. But Tony attended Poway High School, born in Long Beach but raised here in San Diego. Attended Poway High School. After high school, was drafted in the 33rd round by the Braves actually, but elected to go play baseball at San Diego State. Eventually played for his father while at San Diego State. Was in 2003 Mountain West Conference All-Star. Made the right decision to wait on the draft because this time he got drafted in the second round to the Milwaukee Brewers, I believe, in 2003, and then made his Major League Baseball debut in 2006. Played for the Brewers, the Phillies, the Nationals, something that we like to forget though, the Dodgers, and also played for our beloved Padres. After retiring, Tony began a career in radio and television, and this year became the full-time radio analyst for the Padres. Tony devotes his time to family and baseball through his work with the Tony Gwynn Legacy Foundation, which we're going to talk about some of this later today. A nonprofit started in 2019 to grow and develop youth on and off the baseball field. And then Tony's most important responsibility is as a husband and father of four. I have the honor and privilege of spending literally almost every weekend with the Gwynn family on a soccer field sideline somewhere in the Western United States. And I can personally attest what a great family they are. Great kids, great parents, just overall good human beings. So welcome to the Fantastic People series, Tony.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me on. And that was a heck of an introduction, I'll tell you. Thank you.
You bet. Well deserved, man. We're going to start off with just a little bit of background and history growing up here in San Diego. Just what was it like growing up in Poway?
Well, I think it was different. My mom and dad come from very tight-knit families. And so I think we lived right next to Qualcomm when I was little, and then we eventually moved in to Poway when I was maybe 3, 4 years old. And it was different because, although we lived in Poway, I don't know that I had very many friends, in Poway, because when you move into a nice neighborhood like that, you don't know anybody. My mom had 8 siblings, basically. She had 3 brothers, or 5 brothers and 2 other sisters. So it was mainly family around during the early part. But as we kind of acclimated into the city, get to know people, and it was a relatively sheltered, I'd say, upbringing. But Poway's if you know anything about Poway, it's a very tight knit community. It's a small community, and so it kind of fit my mom and dad's personalities pretty well.
All right, excellent. Along the same lines, what was it like being the son of not only a huge baseball star who I was a fan of when I was growing up, but also just a San Diego icon in general?
Well, I don't think as a youngin you notice it all that much. I mean, you realize people are, interrupting dinner or coming up during a movie and asking your dad for an autograph, but it doesn't really settle in until you're a little bit older. But I enjoyed it. I mean, there were times, of course, where, selfishly I might have had something I wanted to do and he had to stay back and sign autographs. But I'd say there's far more positives than there are negatives being the son of Tony Gwynn, for sure.
All right, excellent. Thank you. For your own professional baseball career, it's afforded you the opportunity to live in different parts of the U.S. And we mentioned some of the teams you've played for. What is special and unique about San Diego compared to the other places that you've lived?
Wow. There's so much that is unique about San Diego, if you ask me. I think it's different than really any other place, even in its own state, right? I think San Diego, the vibe is different than it is in Los Angeles, than it is in San Francisco, Sacramento. And the one thing I think that I enjoy that's unique is it's a relatively slow-paced place. Everybody is not on the hustle and bustle. Like one of the things you mentioned, I get a chance to travel all across the United States, and you start to see the difference from the East Coast to the Midwest to the Northwest, and you see the different styles there are. And it doesn't mean anyone is better, but the one that always felt like home and always suited me was San Diego. Obviously, we talk about the weather all the time, and it should be talked about all the time. It is nowhere else in May are you looking out and seeing just especially where I work at Petco Park, as the sun just blaring down the field, and it's a nice crisp 69, 70 degrees. And I value that. I've had to be in the cold. It's not fun. I've had to be in the super humid. It's not fun either. So I think those are the things that stand out to me as being unique. People here in San Diego are very even keeled, slow paced, and then the weather is, you can't beat it.
Yeah, well, we're glad you made the decision to stay here with us, Tony. Call this place home. Moving on to let's talk about baseball and leadership. I'm sure that you've had numerous coaches and mentors throughout your life. Let's start with your dad. What are the top 1 or 2 things that your dad taught you growing up?
The main thing that he taught me, and I still live by it to this day, and that's, what you put in something is what you get out of it. He was really big on working hard, putting in the time, the effort, the detail, when it came to whatever it is I was doing, whether I was playing basketball, whether it was school, whether it was playing baseball. He was big on that. And the other thing was to enjoy what you're doing. For those who got a chance to see my dad, there wasn't a time that he didn't look like he was enjoying himself when he was doing something he loved. And he always seemed to have a smile. He had an infectious laugh. And I try to do those things every day. Even on days where, I'm not at my best or feeling at my best, I still try to make sure I have a healthy laugh or smile during the day, because I truly believe it goes a long way in your mental health.
Do you get that a lot, that you emulate your dad a lot? You sound a lot like him. You have the same infectious smile. Do you get that a lot from people?
The older I've gotten, the more I get it. It started early, when we were under the same roof. People would call the house and they would ask for Tony, and they'd get both of us at times, and they really couldn't tell the difference until, if it was one of my friends, until all of a sudden the conversation shifted in a way that let them know that wasn't little Tony they were talking to, it was big Tony they were talking to. So as I've gotten older, I think it becomes a little more difficult to tell the difference between our voices. But I get that almost every day, honestly, especially doing the broadcast now. People get a chance to hear me on an everyday basis, and I get tweets, texts all the time saying how much I sound like them.
Yeah, that's great. Aside from your dad, who was another mentor or mentors that helped you along the way?
In baseball, you come across so many like special teachers and mentors. One for me, for sure, was Jock Jones. He was around early when I was in college as a freshman. He was working. My dad would work with him during the off season, so I got an up close and personal schooling, kind of what it was like. Him, Jimmy Rollins was another one that I got a chance to meet at a very early. I met him when I was 16 or 17. It was my dad's last All-Star game, and he was like the special election to the All-Star game, and it was Jimmy Rollins' first All-Star game. So we were way closer in age than, my pops and I, obviously. Jimmy was closer to my age. So he was a guy that I always, as I got my career going, reached out to, talked to a lot. Dave Roberts was another one that was a mentor of mine. Mark Sweeney, you guys get to see him on TV often. He was one of my dad's teammates in '98, and so I've had so many of them. And that's kind of one of the luxuries of kind of growing up in a clubhouse, is you come across so many different personalities from all different walks of life, and you get to kind of pick their brain. And if you're lucky enough, as I was, to know these guys past beyond being my dad's teammates or counterparts, you start to get some life lessons in there as well. So I'm sure I'm missing a couple. that I should be mentioning, but they've all had a hand in my success in one shape or another.
Yeah, so some of those guys you mentioned, I know, are San Diego residents too.
Yeah. You know, Mark Sweeney in particular, Jock Jones in particular, both San Diego. And, you know, in that case, they were a little more accessible. You know, I didn't get a chance to get to Jimmy very often unless he was down in San Diego or when we crossed paths in my playing career. But I got the chance to play with him, as you guys saw in those Philly clips, my one of my last seasons, which was the ultimate cool for me.
Let's talk about the current Padres team. Obviously, it was a very exciting year last year, even despite the pandemic conditions and all the changes that brought. Is the Padres kind of a surprise young team and ended up making it into the playoffs and making a little noise. What is your thoughts on this year's team through the first quarter of the season?
I mean, they actually, going into yesterday's game, had the same exact record in as many games as last year. So I would say, despite the injuries, despite not the starting pitching not being at its best all the time, I would say they are doing more than enough at this point. I think it's interesting because a lot of people are having to kind of relearn baseball again because we had that sprint last year in 60 games, and so everybody was uptight when the Padres were like 10-10, like it's like a devastating record. But it's not a 60-game season; it's 162. So it truly is a marathon. So you take a snapshot in April, about a month ago, Padres were 10-10. They had just got swept by the Brewers. Everybody was freaking out, and now you take a snapshot just a month later, and they have one of the best records in baseball. And that is why I try to tell people, you know, you can't. I get it. We're fans. We get lost in the everydayness of it, a vacuum, but this is truly a marathon. And even, you know, a month from now, the snapshot may look completely different than it does at this point. So you can't get too high, you can't get too low. But I think this team has, under the circumstances, if you would have told me that, you know, Fernando Tatis Jr. would have missed almost half the games and wouldn't be swinging the bat as well as he was last year. If you would have told me Machado was, you know, hitting 230 or 240, I would have said you're insane that if you would have told me that their record was, you know, 10 games above 500. But here we are. That's kind of the case. So I think they've done a terrific job. Jay Tingler deserves a lot of credit for how he's been able, because they've also had some crazy injuries pop up, right? Morton out for a year. You lose Weathers during a dead arm period. Blake Snell hasn't, until yesterday, hadn't pitched anything like Blake Snell. And so the Nelson Lamette's been out. I mean, they've had all kinds of injuries, and yet they just keep finding ways to win games.
Well, this is a great segue to the next question, which is really about leadership. And you mentioned Jace Tingler, but let's talk about what role has the front office, the manager, leadership in general had on the culture and performance of this team?
You know, the one thing I've learned, especially in the game of baseball, is that when you have good leadership at the very top, it trickles down everywhere else. And I think as good as AJ and his staff have been over the course of time in terms of how they've turned this organization around, it would have been almost impossible without ownership's cooperation. So, you know, Ron Fowler, Peter Seidler, now have really been the kind of the gasoline to keep this kind of car going. And AJ came in with a certain type of idea of the type of players he wanted, the makeup of these players. And it's been a slow process. And I would argue it hasn't even been a slow process. Normally these things are hit and miss, you know, in a 5-year window where it could go right, it could go wrong. But it seems like every year it has gone as planned. And so, you know, leadership starts at the top. So I would say it starts at, you know, Peter Seidler, Ron Fowler before him, and it's just a continuation on through the baseball operations part, the community leadership part, and then it trickles down on the field. And so they brought in guys that they felt like fit that criteria in terms of the players, and it's worked so far to perfection.
Yeah, been a great start to the season thus far. I'm going to go on to a couple of more fun baseball questions before we get into a different topic here. But in your opinion, who are the top 3 hitters of all time?
Oh, wow. Okay, so I'm biased, so
Yeah,
Tony Gwynn's going to be on there.
you better be.
For me, I got to see it as a fan, and I got to see it up close and personal. Barry Bonds is, I don't care what he's been caught up in, that guy is one of the best hitters I've ever shared a field with, easily. I mean, the skill level to do this, and it'd be interesting if I wish I could have recorded it at the time, but the conversations him and my father used to have about hitting. If you're a hitting nerd like myself, it was like gold. The third hitter, even though I didn't get a chance to see him play, I would probably say Ted Williams. He's the guy that everybody's still chasing in terms of that 400 mark. Only guy to really do it in a season, and he could drive the baseball too. So I would say in terms of hitters, those are my 3 guys.
Yeah, and I never asked you about this, but I know that Ted Williams and your father had a special relationship. They were often caught talking about hitting and shared their stories and insights. Those are 3 pretty good ones to have.
No, my dad didn't get flustered about much of anything, but there's a clip that's on YouTube of the first time my dad is in some glasses and a suit, and Ted, and I could just see the nervousness in my dad. There's one part in the video where Ted asked him a question, and it made me think of when you know the answer to the question in class, but you don't want to get it wrong. And so there's this hesitation, and that's what I saw in my dad from it. It was really, you saw the respect, and then my dad got to be the one that kind of escorted him out on the field for the All-Star game in Boston when he threw out the first pitch. So they had a pretty cool relationship.
What is the favorite team that you were a part of and why?
Wow. I would say my favorite team being a part of was the 2008 Milwaukee Brewer team. It was a bunch of young guys, myself, Prince Fielder, Ricky Weeks, Corey Hart, J.J. Hardy. I mean, there were so many young guys, and then you sprinkled in a CC Sabathia at the deadline, and it was as fun as I've ever had playing games. I wasn't even really playing that much. I was just kind of like filling in here and there, but the amount of laughter we shared, like before the games, during the games, after the games, was pretty special. There were some special guys on that team. I mean, Gabe Kapler, who was the manager of the Giants, was on that team. It was a lot of fun, and then we ended up being the World Series champs in Philly, and playing in my first ever playoff game was just an experience that it's hard to describe, especially in Philadelphia where everybody was going crazy.
This may be related to the same team or may not. I don't know. Who's your favorite teammate of all time and why?
Oh, man. I've had a lot of really good teammates, and I don't know if it'd be fair if I said there was a favorite, but CeCe's up there. If you ask anybody, he's played with him, he's probably on top of everybody's list. He's that good a dude. John Garland, who was the pitcher in the last clip that we didn't show against Pablo Sandoval, he was a terrific teammate I had in San Diego. Prince Fielder, one of my best friends, good teammate. I enjoyed being with Jimmy Rollins as well in my last couple of years. Chase Utley, another good teammate. Like, there's so many teammates that I came across playing for 5 different teams that you remember well. You remember fondly. Craig Stammen, another one. I didn't get to play with Stam for a full season, but I spent I shared a locker room with him in spring training my last season, and he's another stand-up guy.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing, Tony. We're going to move on to a simpler value, which is to champion people. Part of that, of championing people, is to embrace diversity and inclusion. We want this diversity of backgrounds and experiences, cultures, to help us in our mission to building the cleanest, safest, most reliable energy infrastructure in America. Can you tell us how diversity has helped the teams that you've been a part of?
It's a good question, and really the Milwaukee team stands up immediately because I think it's the most Black players that I've ever played with on a team. And so, growing up in Poway, I didn't really ever get to play with anybody that looked like me. And so having that opportunity, and our Milwaukee team was a mix. It really was a melting pot of guys from Venezuela, Mexico, Dominican. And so we didn't really have cliques on that team. It was like everybody, and when you don't have cliques, it allows for everybody to have an opportunity to get to know you on a deeper basis. And listen, cliques happen on teams. That happens a lot, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think naturally people spend time with folks that they're most comfortable with, and in the locker room, it's a little different because you're spending a lot of time, most of your time, with these guys throughout the course of a season. And for guys that English may not be their first language, of course they're going to want to be around guys that speak the same language and kind of have some of the same issues that they have. And so I thought in Milwaukee we did a pretty good job of really having one another's back, and it came and how it ended up helping that year. Right at the end of the season, we had been in first place all year long, and we started losing some games down the stretch, and our manager ended up getting fired, who was Ned Yost at the time. And normally a firing at the end of the season could collapse a team. But I think because we were so tight knit, we were able to kind of rally the troops, if you will, and finish out that year winning the wild card. And I mean, would have been better if we won the division and we didn't have to face the Phillies. But ultimately, we were able to salvage that season after kind of nosediving towards the end, I think because we were a tight-knit group like that.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. We're going to get on to a couple of your personal stories coming up here, but what can you tell us about a story a teammate shared that had a huge impact on you?
Well, I think I don't know if you guys have seen CeCe's documentary.
I have not.
Gosh, I can't remember the name of it. It has something to do with a tree, but I'll look it up here while we're doing it. But just his story about, he's lost a lot of people in his life, and for a long time he carried that burden with him, which led to some of the alcoholism that he's dealt with. And just watching him kind of persevere through that. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame pitcher, and this was all happening in the prime of his career. He tells a story and I was a teammate of his in Milwaukee, so I can attest to this. He would pretty much, and so this is not necessarily a story he told me, but it's a story I kind of saw on my own. And it would manifest itself way later. I mean, he was well into his Yankee career when it came to light of the issues he had. But rewind back to 2008, I would watch him he would drink almost every day until it was the night before his start. And then he would just stop cold turkey. He'd go out and he'd pitch, 8 innings of shutout baseball, and the cycle would start over again. And, I think when you're in it, you don't necessarily realize what's going on. I don't think he realized what was going on at that particular point in his life. But to see him fast forward and really him deciding to go to rehab right before the playoffs started really showed you the priorities that he and what was most important to him, right? And he chose his family over the game at a time where, especially in New York, that seems like a kind of a risky thing. But for him, it was a no-brainer. And so watching him kind of persevere through that and realize as good as he is, he still had things he was battling, and he just kept pushing through it. That's one of the things that I pay a really close attention to, because I thought it took a lot of courage to tell the world the day before your team is going in the playoffs, I'm alcoholic, I need help. And to see him push through that has been quite inspiring.
That excellent. Thank you for sharing, Tony. And speaking of courage and speaking up, it's a great segue to the next point we want to get to. In addition to championing people, the other Semper values are to do the right thing and shape the future. And there were examples of all three of these things in August of last year. You were getting ready to broadcast a game, and the Mariners voted not to proceed with the game, and this is in the aftermath of all the stuff that happened last year: Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and obviously George Floyd. But on that particular day, it was actually the shooting of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, that sparked this. And you got on the air to discuss the topic, and we're going to play a couple of clips from that segment.
More to the point as to what you're expecting today between the Padres and the Mariners apparently making a decision. They did not feel comfortable playing today, so this game's been postponed.
Yeah, and for the Mariners, who have the most African Americans on their team, it shouldn't really come as a surprise. This is a situation that we've been dealing with heavily since George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. And part of the hesitation in getting back to sports was just this, that we would get lost and be able to kind of bury our heads in it and lose ourselves. And that's all fine and dandy, but there's some major issues going on in this country right now. And I think especially players that have platforms, whether it's in basketball, baseball, whatever the sport is, we're at a point now where players are going to use it. The days of shut up and dribble or stick to sports, those days are gone. And rightfully so. It's time for a change. We've got to make it happen. And by protesting, because a lot of people will say, well, what does this do? How does this solve anything? You know what? The reality is it doesn't solve anything today. But Mike and I are on set talking about something that we normally wouldn't be talking about and bringing it to the masses here in San Diego. Yeah, that emotion is real. It's an emotion that I know everybody in my household has. Every one of my African American friends have right now. And that point that Doc was making about having conversations with your son, I mean, I have to have it with my 3 girls as well, And part of you feels guilty because my oldest is 12, my youngest is 5. It's like you just snatched the innocence from them before you should have to. And that's the tough part.
Back with more in a moment.
Yeah, I remember I was actually watching that when it happened last August. We have this group chat that a lot of us soccer dads are on, and started having some messages go around. So a lot of us tuned in, and for those of you, I highly recommend to go. There's like probably 20 minutes of footage with that segment. It's just a great conversation. Tony has some great insight and thoughts and perspectives. Although it shouldn't be like this, it's always difficult and uncomfortable to have those conversations. And I just appreciate and applaud Tony for you speaking up that day. I follow you on social media, and you continue to speak up, and for coming on with us today to have this conversation. So we'd like people to check out the video. We can find some way to get it to you. But there was a segment. There's so many great segments, but there was another segment in there that you referenced a conversation you had with Akbar Jabaja Biamila, another fellow Aztec, and you talked about empathy and having an imagination. Could you kind of replay that conversation you had with AGB for us?
Yeah, it was actually came on a call. Some of our Aztec athletic department asked a few of us just to talk to some of the students about, their lost seasons and how, they were feeling and what was affecting them. And he made such a good point. I think growing up, you often hear, your imagination can take you anywhere, right? Like it is the kind of the foundation for you to dream big. But it seems like we fall short, and he was making the point that we sometimes seem like we fall short of using our imagination when it comes to empathy, and it just struck me when he said it. Like that is really at the crux of the problem, in my opinion, in terms of really understanding one another. You have to be able to remove yourself out of your own situation. And I know that's hard sometimes because we all have our own issues that we deal with in our own life. But when it comes to just humanity, I think that is where we need to apply the imagination thing as much as compared to any of the other areas that there may be some issues in, is that we have to be able to use our imagination to put ourselves in the shoes of others that that you don't necessarily connect with. And I think if we could do that, then you would feel something, when you've seen some of the horrific scenes we saw over the summer. And that's in all walks of life. I know a lot of the summer was focused on Black men and women, Black and brown men and women, but that should be a general basis for everybody, is to be able to use your imagination to put yourself in other people's shoes that may not be as fortunate as you, so that you could feel something. Because I think we all, if we're being honest, can say when you feel something, it moves you in a different way than just seeing something. And I just thought that day Akbar was right on point.
Speaking of the events last summer, it kind of led up to the video clips that we just saw and then the conversation that we're having now. In your eyes, what has happened since last summer to move in a positive direction?
That's a good question, John. I think in some ways we've taken a few steps forward and maybe a step back in certain areas. And as much as, that is disappointing, the conversation still seems like it's moving in a direction that is more helpful than we were maybe 14, 16 months ago. It may not be at the speed that, we need it to go, but I'm a hopeful person. So I want to remain hopeful and believe that we're moving in the right direction. Certainly the conversation is changed. Certainly the temperature has changed. I think far more people are more aware than they ever were prior to the George Floyd incident. Because I think that was the one that kicked everything in gear. We were all at home, all stuck, watching, waiting for different things to come on TV. And then we were all forced to kind of sit and watch it. And I don't know very many people that it didn't move, And so I just think that's probably where we are right now. I'm hopeful that we can continue to make progress. But I would definitely say we've taken some steps forward, but we've also taken maybe one or two back.
Yeah, one more personal story, and I don't know this story, and it showed up on the questions, and I've never asked you about it, and so I'm wondering where this is going. Hopefully, you don't turn me into a puddle here. In the past, you've told a story of going out to dinner with your wife and friends when you were playing in AAA in Huntsville, Alabama. Can you share the story with us?
Yeah, I can share a story. It was actually AA. It was I think it was my first season there. So understand that as a San Diego kid, even though I got to travel to some pretty cool places, I had never really been on my own. And so my first full season of baseball was in 2004. And I was sent to AA Huntsville. This is my first full season. Most guys, get to kind of go through A ball circuit, which is high and low A, and then you kind of progress. So after my 1/2 season, I had just signed in 2003. So it was a big jump. So not only was it a big jump baseball wise, but from a personal standpoint, I had never been on my own. And how it ended up working out is my two buddies, Prince and Ricky, ended up rooming together. So and they only had 2 bedrooms in Huntsville. I couldn't find a 3-bedroom anywhere apparently. So I was stuck by myself for a good portion of that season, and it was really, really hard. Not only was it hard off the field, on the field, it was probably the worst struggle I'd ever had at that point. I'm hitting 235. I'd never hit below 280, and that was in pro ball. And so that was a struggle. And so Elise, my wife, at the time, my girlfriend, was in town. We decided to go out, and I was with another teammate. His name was Manny Parr. He and his girlfriend were out, and we walked into a bar / club, I think it was. It's a little fuzzy right now, but we walk in, and one of the things my father was really big on growing up was paying attention to your surroundings. And so I'm probably overly attentive in situations where I'm in a place where I'm not familiar with, but I always felt like it was for good reason. And so I'm picking up the vibe really as soon as we walk in. And it's not necessarily directed at me. It's really directed towards my wife and my teammate's girlfriend. And, you try not to pay attention to it. You're trying to have a good time. But eventually it becomes uncomfortable enough that we decide to leave. So on our way out, if I remember the story correctly, Manny's girlfriend felt some type of way about us having to leave because these other individuals were making us uncomfortable. So, she said something to one of the young ladies. There begins like a back and forth, and out of nowhere, somebody hurls the N-word. And it's infuriating, but again, I've been fortunate enough to be around my father and understand that there are consequences to your actions, regardless of what's said or what's done. So I'm keenly aware of this as it's going on. And long story short, nothing really happens, and then we leave. But it was really my first introduction to I wasn't in California anymore. It was a different. I was dealing with something a little bit different than I had ever dealt with in San Diego for the most part. Not that blatant, And it was eye opening for me, and it kind of changed the way I moved, from that point on.
Well, thank you for sharing, Tony. And obviously, it wasn't even too long ago, and we still have our own struggles in California too, but different parts of the country are kind of across the spectrum with this whole thing. And I just thank you for engaging us on this important topic. SDG and Semper are committed to keeping the issue of racial and gender equality and social justice at the forefront. Keep having these conversations so we can help move the ball and get society and our country where we would like it to be, for not only for ourselves but obviously for our kids. So thanks again, man, for talking with us about that.
No problem.
Going to move on to your second career here after your playing days. Often in our company, people transition from one job to another. In your case, you went from the diamond to the media room. What's been the most difficult part of that transition?
The camera has been the most difficult part. Getting used to, finding it, the little nuances that go with being on television. And I've been so blessed to be around people that have been willing to help and really lend their hand in helping me develop as a broadcaster, as a TV personality. Katie Temple was like my first coach, still is my coach. She worked here in San Diego for a while. She did baseball in Atlanta, and she's kind of showed me the way and kind of helped me big time. And then it's just staying with it. I kind of had to. The thing about being around my dad for so long, I watched so many of his teammates come and go, and not necessarily take advantage of the relationships they learned or they cultivated while they were playing, and use it to their benefit. So I was always keenly aware of that. I knew, as much as I loved being an athlete and playing sports, that it couldn't last forever. And so probably about 5 years before my career ended, I started kind of branching out and really trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Now, I'd be lying if I said I knew I was going to end up being a radio broadcaster, or if I was going to, I'd be lying if I even said I thought I would be doing pre and post. I just knew I wanted to be close to the game. But I also knew it wasn't necessarily the right time to be a coach. My kids were really young. My wife had already kind of spent most of my career like doing it by herself. And so getting into coaching is virtually like playing. I mean, you got to be there every day. You got to travel with the team. And so I knew that wasn't necessarily the way I wanted to go. So I had to do, I think when you start out, you envision it just rolling downhill and being this big thing. But I had to kind of, pay my dues, if you will. I had to do a lot of stuff for free, which was okay, because at the time it wasn't really about money. It was about the reps and, getting out there and getting the practice. And so I was lucky. I got a gig with the Dodgers my first year out of baseball. I did 156 pre or post game shows on the radio up in Los Angeles. Now, I was lucky. They didn't make me go up to LA to do it. I could do it from a studio here in San Diego. So that was like my first introduction into it. The following year, they had me back. I started doing some TV stuff with LA, and it really it was like being in class. Like I got to work with John Hartung. I got to work with one of my old teammates, Jerry Harrison Jr. And I got to learn from those guys. And then, getting to work with Alana Rizzo in LA. And then so by chance, it's funny, I tell the story how I ended up in San Diego. I was at a soccer tournament actually in Irvine. And I got a tweet, and I really honestly don't get on Twitter too much. It's a very toxic environment, so I stay off of it as much as possible. But I happened to get on that day, and there was a fan that had tweeted at me why I wasn't working for the Padres. And I kind of took offense to it at the time, because it wasn't like I wasn't trying to work for the Padres. I could only go someplace where I was offered a job. And so I just kind of tweeted back like, you'd have to ask them. And then like, I don't know what happened, but a whole bunch of people retweeted it. And then I got a phone call from the Padres. And from that point, it was like, this is a no-brainer. I get to work here in San Diego. Even the folks even some of the folks in LA, some of the guys who helped me get the job were telling me, hey, might be a good idea for you to go back home. I mean, it seems like the perfect place for you. So I did that, and it's been great. I've got to wear so many different hats and get better at doing different things. I've got to host. I've got to be an analyst. I got a chance to have my own radio show, which kind of came out of thin air, and it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy, as you know, John, I enjoy talking sports in general. I love sports. Like, my wife would allow me, I would literally watch it 24 hours a day, and that's how much I enjoy it. And I think it comes through on the radio when I'm talking about it.
Absolutely, it does, Tony. I think I can speak for a lot of people. We're glad you've made that transition. And it's similar to the UMix, we have a lot of conversations on the sidelines. I love sports too. So thank you for answering the question. Definitely want to cover the last topic here. So you're very active in the nonprofit community, just being the type of person you are. Along with a colleague of ours, Mike Schneider, you're a member of the board of directors of the San Diego chapter of the American Lung Association. SDG is a big supporter of ALA. Can you tell us why this cause is important to you and what you want people to know about ALA?
Yeah, both myself and my father had asthma. I had it really bad to the point where I ended up being at about 9. I think it was 9. I ended up being in a hospital for about 2 weeks because my lungs just weren't working correctly, and we didn't know why. And one of the doctors on the board, Dr. Welsh, honestly saved my life. I was going to a Montessori school in Poway. It was a great school, loved it. But during the week, I'd come home and I would just be sick as a dog. And then I'd come home from school on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I would feel great. Monday come around, I'd come over for school, starting all over again. And so we ran. He was the first one to introduce at least to us, the tests where you can find out what you were allergic to at the time. You gotta remember, this is in the 90s, so as much as we know about lungs and asthma now, we didn't have the same information at that point. And so what we found out is I was allergic to a lot of like farm animals, goats, chickens, and it turns out at Montessori we had a bunch of those. So I was pretty much going to school every day and putting myself in an environment where I couldn't really survive. And so really without him, I don't know that my mom, because my mom was, she was up with me for a long time, many nights, as we tried to figure out how to kind of get our arms around this asthma thing. And without him, I don't know that I'm sitting here talking to you today. So when he reached out about ALA, it was kind of a no-brainer for me.
Excellent, man. Something you probably don't know, but Kara has really bad asthma, has been struggling with it her whole life.
I know that.
In 2019, you founded the Tony Gwynn Legacy Foundation. Can you still tell us the story of how it was started?
Yeah, I can. I have some travel ball teams, and every year it was hard for some of our kids to pay their way and for tournaments and things of that nature. And so they just couldn't afford it. And travel ball can get a little expensive at times. And so my mom and I had discussed in the past of really doing it for multiple sports, but we thought we'd start with baseball and really when I was playing early in my career, my mom had a curriculum center here in Poway that was one of her pride and joys. And that ran for, 7-8 years here in Poway, where they were constantly, so she kind of had a curriculum that she wanted to use on some of our baseball kids. And really be able to help them thrive not only on the field but off the field. And so that's kind of how it started. My sister's into music, so she hosts I guess it's like some type of music group that comes in, and there's a bunch of different singers, and they teach the kids the kind of the nuances of singing and playing these different instruments, and that's really how it came about. We wanted to help kids that don't have the means and don't have maybe even the transportation to be able to participate in these type of things, because it's important for kids, you know, to have outlets where they can be great. They can see, they can live out their dreams a little bit. And I think it's something that's important to me and my family.
Sounds like a fantastic cause, Tony. And one more that also sounds fantastic. You're involved with the Players Alliance, another nonprofit dedicated to providing more opportunities for kids of color who want to play baseball. Can you tell us about this work and how it's contributing to diversity through baseball?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've seen, especially particularly in baseball, we've seen the numbers kind of drop off, especially for African American players. And I think the consistent theme when you talk to people is too expensive. First and foremost, you know, unlike, you know, soccer where you only need a ball and a wall to work on your skills, basically. There's so much equipment that comes with baseball, right? You have to have a bat, not cheap. Have to have a glove, not cheap. You got to have the necessary uniform, also not cheap. And so what the Players Alliance has done, and, you know, due to COVID, it was a little more difficult than I think we anticipated, but we still got it out there. We didn't get to San Diego, but we had a truck where guys, you know, donated gear that they had, or just, you know, gear that they come across. And we went to a bunch of different cities throughout the United States. California was a little bit tougher to pull off because our restrictions were a little heavier than some of the other states. So we had to kind of postpone the one here, but it's a terrific cause. It's something that has kind of been in the making for, I mean, going back to when I was playing, but again, the George Floyd incident really moved things along. That Player Alliance, I'm sure, would still kind of be in its infant stages without, you know, some of these situations happening, unfortunately. But it's a great cause. Everybody's behind it. It's the irony in the Players Alliance. And I don't know if it's irony, but you mentioned the Seattle game. One of the guys who I consider a little brother who was kind of spearheaded that game being postponed was D. Gordon, and he's one of the higher ups in our Player Alliance. He does a lot of good work, and you know, I honestly try to follow his lead as much now as he tried to follow mine when I was helping his development as a player.
Hey, well, very, very, very cool causes, Tony, and really appreciate you being involved and active in those sorts of things, because it helps us all. And you know, on behalf of my colleagues, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and sharing your passion for baseball, family, social justice, and just, you know, your love for San Diego in general. As a token of our appreciation, and on behalf of SDG&E, we're proud to issue a $15,000 contribution to the Tony Gwynn Legacy Foundation to advance your efforts and to continue your father's legacy by creating opportunity for all youth and teens at all levels of baseball to grow and develop their skills on and off the field with professional staff and coaches. But in addition to this, we'll also have another token of our appreciation. You should have received something yesterday, so maybe you could go ahead and open it for us.
Let me grab it.
All right, Tony. Yeah, so it's a not a signed Padres jersey, but we have some fantastic people in our company that work at our Miramar facility that have signed your hat, and so that's another token of our appreciation for you being with us today. And then also for those watching the broadcast, you should see something up on your screen. If you want to help support the youth leadership work of the Tony Gwynn Legacy Foundation, I definitely encourage you to make a donation through the My Energy platform. And also to request the My Energy match. So Semper will match the funds that you donate to the Tony Gwynn Legacy Foundation. Instructions on how to do this will be included in a follow-up message and a recap of this story on our Power Up internal company website. In addition, all employees who donate to the Tony Gwynn Legacy Foundation by Friday, June 4th, if the cause should be enough for you alone, but you will also be entered into an opportunity drawing to win Padres tickets for an upcoming game against the Dodgers, which is a really hot ticket, by the way, or the Philadelphia Phillies, and one of 2 Padres jerseys. You can either go old school with Tony Gwynn's dad here, or a Fernando Tatis Jr. jersey. Tony, the SDG family and I just thank you so much for taking the time with us today to share your story and engaging with us on some great topics and conversation. I know this is one of your very few off days that you have, and being a father of 4, there really are no off days. So just thank you for taking the time to spend part of your day with us. Look forward to seeing you at the next soccer tournament. I don't think you're going to make it there this weekend with your schedule, but I'm sure we'll be together soon. Give my best to the fam.
I will do. It was an absolute honor to come on here and speak with you guys today. I am so appreciative of the donation, and thank you again for having me.
All right, and to all my SDG colleagues, thank you for tuning in, and continue to be safe, healthy, and well. Thank you, everybody.